Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Reborn on Ahlulbayt TV with our guest today, Sister Latifa Chalabi, who has been so far telling us about her quest for knowledge about Islam, particularly Shia Islam. Before we go into what you did next in terms of trying to find out more about the madhab of Ahlulbayt, I'm curious as to what made you make those claims in the first place, i.e. the Shia kafir, you know, they worship stones or whatever it was that you were thinking at the time. Where do you think because you mentioned how you weren't really that religious prior to this anyway, so where do you think these misconceptions came from?
To be truly honest, I think it came from my family, unfortunately. Coming from certain strict Sunni backgrounds, I think this happens a lot with those kind of individuals, where once in a while they like to have a good Shia bashing. You know, they would sit down, the topic would come up from some end. Usually it's around Ramadan, where, you know, we fast differently to the Sunni brothers and sisters. So, you know, they'd say, oh, they'd literally start up from there. These people are always on the wrong path. They would always, you know, try and do this, and then they would bring up the issue of shirk, the issue of bid'ah, the issue of our madhab being started from Jews, talking, you know, all the misconceptions.
Our madhab, obviously you're talking about the madhab.
Our madhab of Ahlulbayt. You know, they would bring such ridiculous stories, you know, Allahu A'lam where they come from. But as a child growing up in that kind of environment, even if you're not sitting with the adults and you're listening to them, just hearing it once in a while, you do pick up on it.
Sure.
And I remember once asking my father directly, you know, what's a Shia? And he would tell me that, oh, it's someone who prays on stones. They worship the stones. They pray like us, but they pray on stones.
And of course, your father is educated.
What?
I said, of course, your father is educated.
Yeah, my father is educated in the sciences, but unfortunately not in other aspects at the time. And so as a child, you know, you ask that, and because it's so different from what I was used to, you know, what, praying on stones? You know, you pray on a mat, what have stones got to do with it? You know, it's such an unnatural place for a stone to be under your forehead whilst you're praying. So it was a very big, I remember that very, very clearly, and I think that among other things, shaped my view of the Shia at the time to be negative.
Sure. So this friend of yours was upset, and as you said, this spurred you on to find out a bit more. I mean, what exactly did this friend of yours say when you told her all of this? She just said basically, you don't know me to be able to judge me.
She said something of that nature, but it was mainly, you know, look, you're talking out of ignorance. It's not about her as an individual. You know, I knew her as a friend, but she just said, you know, you don't know my religion. You don't know what I believe in. So why are you saying what you're saying? You know, ask me. Ask me questions. I can reply back to you. But when you make statements, what room is there for discussion when you've already decided? And at that stage, it was a very big thing for me to hear, because I have living in a very traditional background and growing up in the West, you know, women are supposed to be in the kitchen, yet I felt empowered as a woman in the West, and I didn't want to be in the kitchen, you know. I wanted to be out where my brothers were. I wanted to be on bikes. I wanted to go to the parks. I wanted to go to my friend's house. And you would hear things like, you know, no, it's not in our culture. This is wrong. It's not in our religion. And I knew what it felt like to some extent be oppressed by who you were. So when I had felt that I had oppressed another individual or had judged another individual based on something that I have no knowledge of,
sure,
it was a very deep emotion, and I think that's what sparked my journey.
Sure. So then, how did you go about finding out more about Islam, about Shia Islam?
Well, I had been reading, books, but there's only, I think, so much that you can get from books, especially as a Sunni individual. You'd kind of go on the website and then you'd find 101 websites about why Shias are wrong and why, and it's always from one-sided. And I did understand that. I did understand that there was always a bias. So I think I don't know what I was waiting for, but I knew that I couldn't progress with the knowledge that I wanted to learn from these sources. Alhamdulillah, later on that year, I was introduced to a brother at my school who was Shia, and very open about it, very comfortable with it, and someone who's very active vocally, who, mashallah, wrote poetry. He was a great debater, very active in his studies as well. He left nothing unturned, or every aspect of his life. You could tell that this individual placed a lot of emphasis and a lot of concentration and focus into. So, alhamdulillah, he had the time to answer my questions. He had the time to direct me to exactly what kind of books I should be reading, rather than picking up any women in Islam type books. I should be learning about the Ahlulbayt. I asked him a lot of questions. Why do you focus on other people? Why can't you just talk about the Prophet? The Prophet is where it all came from. And he's like, well, of course we do talk about the Prophet. It's just that with the Ayyimah, he explained to me their infallibility. And he explained to me the fact that everything that has been said by the Ayyimah has originally come from the Prophet. If we have no sources from it being directly from the Prophet, then the Ayyimah are the best source other than him. Sure. He showed me from the own, Sunni books, Hadith books, Muslim, Bukhari, all these other books, that the importance of Ahlulbayt, that normal Sunni Muslims, brothers and sisters, don't place on them, and that the place of the companions, which they have, is the place of our Ahlulbayt, and even higher. Sure. So from him, I gained a completely different insight into Islam. Before, even when I was trying to learn about Islam and I got involved with the Sunni brothers and sisters in the school, I still felt there was some sort of distance from life and religion. They all seemed to have their own places. They were distant in some way. But when I started learning about Shia Islam, they just became unified so beautifully. Everything had a reason. Women weren't oppressed anymore. Surprisingly, even in Sunni books, a woman shouldn't speak. There should be a veil. Not just a scarf on her head. No, there should be a physical parting between a teacher and his students, or things like that. That there was no reason for. Shia Islam, I saw, had such a practical. Just made life so easy and made life to be lived the way it should be. So thanks to the brother, alhamdulillah, I came to the school of Ahlulbayt.
Alhamdulillah. Did you ever have conversations with your Sunni counterparts about the thought processes that you so eloquently just explained to us now? I mean, was this something you shared with them, and if so, what was the response?
I didn't share them openly, as in people understood that I, Sunni, was hanging around a Shia person, and that he was rubbing off on me, because I think in my actions as well, I started to understand through the madhab of Ahlulbayt that you can't be a passive Muslim. That's not an acceptable thing for you to be. You have to be an active Muslim, and through that, more questions started coming in my head. So when I started thinking like a Shia, so in front of Sunnis, they would say certain things that they no longer made sense to me. I would reply back to them, and I would challenge those views. So they did pick up on that change. I think they'd be stupid not to have picked up on it. Sure. But no, a couple of people asked me, "Oh, are you Shia? Are you Shia?" I would always deny that. Firstly, because of my family situation. Coming from a very, very strict, unreligious, but leaning towards a Sunni Wahhabi type mentality, it was it was very dangerous for me to have publicly admitted it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Your family's non-religious, but leaning towards a kind of Wahhabi type Islam.
Yes.
So this brother was instrumental in you seeing the truth for what it was and understanding the school of Ahlulbayt a lot clearer. Was this all that you needed to do for you to become a Shia? Or, I mean, was it on the back of these conversations that you decided after some time that, yes, I'm going to become a Shia, or not? Did you have to do something else?
You know, I knew the truth when I saw it, and even though I did not admit it to myself or other people, I knew internally that that's what I believed in. Whether I did not practice what I had known or what I knew to be true for quite a while. I don't know whether it was laziness or whether it was just the environment that I was in, you know, family, pressure. But it was, how can I put it? The family in general, I think it had a great impact on the way that I lived my life in that aspect, in that time, where, you know, I would be surrounded by them for a very long period of time, and where I was influenced on one side by my brother. I was influenced, as in my brother in Islam, the brother who had helped me.
Sure.
On the other side, I was influenced by my family, who, no matter, I think, what had happened, I had still felt some bond, some form of loyalty to them, although it seems ridiculous now. You know, some form of loyalty, and just, you know, I didn't want to do this to them. I knew what it meant.
So it would break their hearts?
It would break me as physically, but no, not just that. It was you know, their reputation. My father has a reputation for being a doctor, and, you know, back home, and very revered, especially coming from poverty. You know, for someone to have been a success and moved to Europe, if Fuad got back to home. Also because we had a lot of friends who emigrated with us here, so family friends, and they were in the same school as me, their children, so it would be like a circle of reputation and fear of violence at home. You know, unfortunately a lot of the culture in the East finds it okay for women to be beat. That's something that's completely normal. A man can hit his wife, a father can beat his daughter, you know, to teach her a lesson. If she's out of line, then he somehow has the authority to do that. He can judge whether she's right or wrong, and he can train her through violence to change her ways. I think it was a fear of a lot of different aspects that didn't make me actually implement what I had been taught.
So you, intellectually, you believed,
yeah,
but in terms of practice, it wasn't something that you were able to do, because it sounds like what you're saying is you would have become the black sheep, if I can use that phrase, or a source of shame for your family because you've become a follower of that. Yeah. Really, it's that serious? It
is that serious, and not just a form of shame. It's a lot deeper than that. You know, my father, as the head of the household, takes his position very seriously. And it would have, you know, he's kind of the elder of our entire family, and again, he has a big reputation back home, and it would not have been a source of shame. It would, in his eyes, it would have been the source of his destruction, and he couldn't allow that. He wouldn't have allowed that if he knew. Yes. So you know, he had made several comments because. You could, you know, he's found the books that I was reading, you know, he saw the turba a couple of times, and although he questioned and I gave logical answers, there was still a bit of doubt in his head, and he made, you know, some comments about, you know, don't you dare, you know, over my dead body, those type of comments that made me quite fearful of publicly announcing myself as a Shia to my family.
Sure. You have to forgive me, I'm a little bit confused. And I want to maybe talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the violence in a minute. But you've got to this stage where you've accepted this path, but there's some real and present danger at home, yet you're sitting here on telly announcing to the world potentially that you're a Shia. I mean, so what broke the cycle?
Recently I have made a decision to live my life the way that I should. So I had been practicing taqiyya for such a long time now. Alhamdulillah, the opportunity presented itself where I have been able to move back to my mum's house and live with her. Alhamdulillah, she's, from what I believe, and may Allah guide her further, to be a good Muslim and someone who is on the middle path, you know, not an extremist, and neither is she not practicing. You know, I was able to comfortably tell her what I believed in and why I believed in it. You know, although there's not any true acceptance of that, it's still, I can live my life with her. You know, we're still mother and daughter, and that's more or less why I've decided to take the step. You know, there's no reason for me not to speak about my journey. There's no reason for me to hide any longer. You know, I haven't spoken to my father about it yet, so he doesn't know from me. I'm sure he will do soon.
From you or
from anyone? Now, alhamdulillah, that shame that I thought I would bring to him no longer matters, because in one way or another, this can be a great khair for him. You know, him knowing that I am a Shia may somehow bring a series of events that will result in his guidance. But in any case, alhamdulillah, now I'm in a situation where I don't fear his violence, I don't fear his influence on my life anymore.
Just because you've moved away from...
I've moved away. There was an issue of disownment in there as well, which I think, alhamdulillah, is for my own benefit anyway.
Disownment?
Yes. So my father, for certain reasons, you know, about marriage and whatnot, also because I had finally stood up and said to him, I no longer allow you to be violent with me. He refused that. I now have authority over myself and authority over his actions towards me, and he refused that. What do you call it? He just refused that front. He refused the fact that I was my own person, and that I was no longer a blind sheep following whatever he wanted, and he no longer wanted me in his household, which alhamdulillah is what I've been wanting for a very long time, just haven't been able to act on it myself. So again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest of planners.
Alhamdulillah, you're alhamdulillah, very, very strong, no doubt, because I mean, of course, for sisters sometimes, and it's good that you've come on the show as well, because sometimes we don't appreciate what some sisters have to go through, and may Allah continue to reward you for everything that you have gone through. When you were able to break away, if I can call it that, from your father's dominance over you, and moved back to your mother and felt comfortable speaking to her about the changes that you had made in your life and so on and so forth, how was it in terms of, I mean, apart from the internet, apart from this particular brother who was very influential in those initial stages, I mean, had you had an opportunity to speak to anybody or go to any lectures? Did you strike up relationships with other Shia Muslims that helped you progress further?
Yeah, that's a really good point. During those years where I was practicing in taqiyya, there was obviously little that I could do considering the constraints on my time and where I went and who I saw. So even if my friends came over to my house, my Shia friends, there was little that we could discuss. You know, we'd have to create secret words.
Really?
Or, yeah.
Was your dad actually listening, do you think?
Well, I don't think he was listening, but there was always a fear of someone being around. You know, that's the kind of environment that it was. The house was small, overcrowded, you know, because of all the brothers and sisters and guests at times. And so, you know, there was always a fear of someone listening in to something, even if they didn't want to. Sorry, what was the question?
So I was asking about how, I mean, who did you gain... Well, where did you gain further knowledge from?
on that aspect, I think, alhamdulillah, technology has a great part to do with people learning, you know, whether it's religious or any other type of ilm. My main source of knowledge came from the internet and from lectures of various scholars and lecturers. You know, Sayyid Mudarrisi is a great lecturer. I had listened to Ammar Naqshbandi on several occasions. His lectures were also of benefit to me. You know, Hajj Hassanain Rajab Ali is an amazing individual who I think he talks to the modern man of today. You know, the scientist as well as the so his lectures had a really big influence on me. Also watching things live, you know, watching live at Karbala, watching protests, and just seeing how people have been suffering and in the cause of Islam. And when I say Islam, I mean Shia Islam. You know, just I think the internet had a big influence on me. Or influence on me gaining any type of resource for me to learn from. Also, I had, because of my situation, so sensitive, and you know, it has both religious and social implications that you don't usually get a mix of both. I had spoken to Sayyid Fadil Milani, who is a great resource to the UK. Who's very accessible, mashallah, you know, on telephone or in person, and has such great practical advice to give. There's also other scholars who are around who I had the benefit of speaking to, alhamdulillah, who Allah had put in my path, who I had spoken to, and also I had spoken to the representative of my marja in London. So again, great accessibility of all these scholars, and they had all advised me to gain independence from my household. So to, in effect, move out, leave, gain financial independence from my father and from my family, and either move back to my mum's house, move into with a friend, live alone, you know, get married, just gain independence in that aspect.
Sure. Alhamdulillah. How has there been much of a cultural shift? And of course, maybe that's not the right word to use. From Islam as you knew it then, let's call it, because it was a kind of secular Islam anyway, the Islam as you knew it then, at certain times of the year, to Shia Islam, are you now able to decipher, to distinguish between religion and culture? And also, I mean, no doubt there will be some differences between what you used to observe and practice prior to the shift to Shia Islam.
I definitely can see a great difference now between my old lifestyle and then comparing it to my family's practice of Islam and my own practice now. Great differences. I think the most would be now, as a result of everything that had happened before, I completely reject culture. It's not something that I like to implement. You know, if it has a religious backing to it, then, you know, ahlan wa sahlan, do it, repeat it. But anyone that turns around and says, oh, but you know, this is what is culturally accepted here, it's not something that enters my mind. Culture now means very little because of how I've seen culture abused, unfortunately forced upon me, when it was something that I didn't want to accept anyway. So I think that's a natural reaction. I'm very defensive now when it comes to anything that does not have an Islamic background to it. But in many cases, as in when I'm interacting with my Pakistani friends or with my Arab Muslims, Sunni, Shia, there's not much of a difference between the way they practice their Islam and the way I practice my Islam. You know, we all wear practically the same thing. We discuss more or less the same things, and we have very similar views on you know, the non-controversial topics of Islam. So in day-to-day practical lifestyle, no, there hasn't been much of a change because alhamdulillah, most of culture does derive from religion.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the time that you've shared with us and sharing your story with us as well. And just on a final note, any regrets?
I think my only regret was not being braver, you know, with regards to my father's situation. I don't think I have truly believed in the great majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know, until quite recently, until I saw how things just magically slot into place, you know. I regret not taking the step myself, rather than more or less having it forced upon me. I think I could have, if I had taken that choice myself, I felt that maybe there could have been a greater reward for me there. Also, you know, a test of character. I would like to think of myself as being stronger than that. And following in Imam Hussein's steps, you know, standing up against oppression. I think that's my biggest regret.
But alhamdulillah, you managed to do it, even if it wasn't as early as you would have liked to have done it. So alhamdulillah, may Allah of course reward you and continue to shower His blessings upon you, especially in this holy month. Thank you very much once again on behalf of all our viewers for coming in. I know it couldn't have been easy for you to come and share so much sensitive information with us, and we are truly appreciative of it. Sister Latifa Chalabi, Assalamu alaikum, thank you very much. You've been watching Reborn. Remember, if you know of anybody who would like to come on and share their story with us, kindly email us reborn@ahlulbayt.tv. See you again soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.